Millionaire CEO accidentally bumps into a clumsy young country girl, but days later, she leaves him crazy and confused. Before we start the story, comment below which city you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Alyssa Collins was far from home, in a city that looked like it was straight out of a movie. Everything in Lakeview was elegant and intimidating, exactly the opposite of her small hometown, Willow Springs. Holding a package tightly, Alyssa took a deep breath. "Just deliver it and leave," she told herself as she entered the towering Phillips Enterprises building. Mesmerized by the luxury of the lobby, Alyssa got distracted for a moment and didn't notice the man heading straight toward her. It was Noah Phillips, the company's CEO, walking down the stairs with his eyes glued to his phone. Tall, confident, and used to being in control, he didn't expect to be stopped, or rather, knocked into. Alyssa tripped on the carpet, lost her balance, and the box flew out of her hands. She crashed into Noah, spilling the coffee he was holding all over his pristine suit. The sound of the cup hitting the floor and the collision made everyone in the lobby turn to look. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Alyssa blurted out, panicking as she tried to wipe his suit with her sleeve. "I didn't see you there. It was an accident. I swear." Noah glanced down at the coffee dripping onto his tie, then at the young woman in front of him. "An accident? You think that's an excuse?" His voice was firm but not loud, as though he was trying to hold back his anger. Alyssa gulped. He was intimidating, but instead of retreating, she shot back. Well, if the carpet wasn't so slippery and people weren't walking everywhere, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Her response threw Noah off for a moment. He wasn't used to such direct comebacks. "So now it's the carpet's fault?" His voice was low, laced with sarcasm. "Interesting. That's not what I meant. Look, I'm just here to deliver this." Alyssa grabbed the box from the floor and held it up like a peace offering. "If you want to fire me, go ahead, but I don't even work here." The contrast between her awkward presence and the polished environment was almost comical. Noah shook his head, took the box from her hands and sighed. "Fine. Now leave without causing any more damage. Can you manage that?" Alyssa bit her lip to hold back a retort. She simply nodded and stepped back. "All right, sorry again." As she hurried away, Noah watched, intrigued. It wasn't common for someone to talk to him like that, especially someone so out of place in his corporate world. She was, without a doubt, different. Outside the building, Alyssa leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. "What a disaster," she muttered, her face still burning with embarrassment. On her way home, she couldn't get the man in the suit out of her head. He was rude, but there was something about him that reminded her of how different their worlds were, and how she didn't belong in his. What she didn't know was that Noah wouldn't forget their encounter anytime soon either. Back in Willow Springs, Alyssa parked her old truck in front of her grandmother's small store, still trying to shake off the disastrous delivery trip to Lakeview. She rushed inside, hoping to hide behind the counter before anyone could ask about it. "Alyssa, how did it go?" her grandmother asked enthusiastically while arranging jars of jam on the shelf. "It was fine," Alyssa replied, trying to sound casual, but the scene of spilling coffee on the CEO wouldn't leave her mind. She took a deep breath and forced a smile. The package was delivered, and that's what matters. Her grandmother narrowed her eyes, sensing the hesitation in Alyssa's voice. "You didn't get into one of your messes, did you?" "Not exactly. I just spilled some coffee on their boss," Alyssa admitted, grimacing as she spoke. Her grandmother just laughed, shaking her head. "Well, at least you made an impression, didn't you?" Meanwhile, miles away, Noah Phillips was in his penthouse office in Lakeview, trying to focus on the contracts spread across his desk. But he couldn't get Alyssa's face out of his mind. There was something about her, a chaotic energy perhaps, that was impossible to ignore. He knew he should set it aside and concentrate on work. His company was on the brink of a major expansion, and he needed his full attention. Among the many tasks on his plate, Noah was reviewing the land acquisition project in Willow Springs, a venture his team deemed promising. The goal was to build a distribution center that would connect rural areas to urban markets, but achieving that meant purchasing properties from small-scale farmers. Noah made a note on his tablet and called his assistant, Blake, a pragmatic man who always got straight to the point. Blake, what's the status of the negotiations in Willow Springs? We're making progress. Most of the landowners seem willing to sell, but there's some resistance. It's a small town. Many people have deep ties to their land. Blake replied, then head down there and figure out how to resolve this. I want the deal closed as soon as possible, Noah ordered, snapping his tablet shut to end the conversation. Meanwhile, Alyssa was trying to go about her daily routine, but she couldn't stop thinking about Noah. Not because of how he treated her, but because of what he represented. The big city, the sophistication, the absolute control over everything. It felt so far removed from her world. Willow Springs was her home, but deep down, Alyssa knew she wanted more. She craved something different, something she couldn't quite define. Days went by, and life in Willow Springs seemed to return to normal. Alyssa helped at the general store, chatted with neighbors, and made deliveries around town. But the peace was disrupted when trucks bearing corporate logos began appearing in the area. The townspeople grew uneasy. Rumors circulated about a major company interested in buying land in the region. For many, it meant not just losing their properties, but also the heart of the community they had built over generations. One late afternoon, as Alyssa was closing the store, Blake walked in, carrying a folder of documents. He was straightforward, no nonsense, and looked completely out of place in his perfectly tailored suit amid the rustic setting of the shop. "Good afternoon," he said. "I'm looking for the landowners in this area. I work for Phillips Enterprises, and we're interested in acquiring property here. Could you tell me who I should speak with?" Alyssa froze for a moment. "Phillips Enterprises?" she repeated, the connection snapping into place in her mind. Her heart raced. It couldn't be. "Yes, we're assessing properties for an expansion project. Do you know the owners of the surrounding lands?" Alyssa pointed to the bulletin board by the door, where a map of the town displayed names and contact details of various residents. "You can start here," she said defensively. Blake thanked her politely and left, leaving Alyssa with a flood of questions. Phillips Enterprises, the same company Noah worked for. What did they want with Willow Springs? And why did it leave her feeling so unsettled? That evening, as she helped her grandmother prepare dinner, Alyssa couldn't shake the thoughts from her mind. "Grandma, have you heard anything about companies buying land around here?" she asked casually. "Yes, I have. I heard about it at the market today. They say it's a big corporation, but we don't know yet what they plan to build. Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Alyssa lied, trying to mask her concern. Meanwhile, Blake was reporting the initial findings to Noah. "The town is more resistant than we expected. It won't be easy to convince everyone to sell. Many families have been there for generations." "Offer whatever it takes," Noah said, his tone unyielding. "I want this resolved quickly." But as he ended the call, Noah hesitated. He knew Willow Springs was crucial for the company's expansion, yet a small pang of discomfort lingered. Maybe it was Alyssa's image flashing in his mind again, her disarming honesty, her simplicity. He shook his head, frustrated with himself. Feelings had no place in business. As the Phillips Enterprises trucks continued driving around Willow Springs, rumors became the town's hottest topic. For Alyssa, it meant only one thing: her path was about to cross with Noah's again. And this time, she knew it wouldn't be simple. The sun shone brightly over Willow Springs as the trucks from Phillips Enterprises moved through town with increasing frequency. The residents, suspicious, watched the men in suits who looked so out of place on the dusty streets lined with modest homes. Alyssa sensed that something big was coming, and for some reason it made her stomach churn. That morning, while organizing boxes at the general store, she overheard two customers talking. "They say they want to buy up all the land in the eastern area," said Mr. Benson, owner of one of the largest farms nearby. "They're offering good money, but it'll ruin our town." "And who's to say they'll keep their promises?" "Exactly. It's always good for them, never for us," Mrs. Parker replied. She turned to Alyssa. "Your grandmother hasn't mentioned selling the store's land, has she?" "Not that I know of," Alyssa replied, feeling a growing knot in her chest. If Phillips Enterprises really was trying to take over the land, it would change everything. But what bothered her most was the name behind it all: Noah Phillips. Knowing he was directly involved only made the situation more complicated. As she tried to focus on her work, another truck pulled up outside the store. This time, it wasn't Blake or any other assistant. It was Noah. He stepped out of the vehicle like he was walking onto foreign soil, his expensive shoes sinking slightly into the dusty street. The townspeople paused their activities, watching him with curious and distrustful eyes. The man in the tailored suit and serious expression seemed completely out of place amidst the simplicity of Willow Springs. Alyssa saw Noah through the store's window and felt her heart race. She silently prayed he was there for any reason that didn't involve her. But when he walked into the store, his eyes locked onto hers immediately. She froze. "Alyssa Collins," he said, as though confirming a suspicion. His voice was calm but carried an air of authority. She blinked a few times, trying to process what was happening. "Noah Phillips," she replied, crossing her arms. "What brings you to Willow Springs? Missing the coffee?" The corner of Noah's mouth twitched in a near smile, but he quickly returned to his serious demeanor. "I'm here on business. It seems our operations involve this town." Alyssa narrowed her eyes, tilting her head slightly. "Operations? You mean buying up everyone's land and turning it into some corporate project?" "Something like that," he admitted without hesitation. "But I'm here to make sure it's done the right way." "Oh, of course, because destroying people's livelihoods politely makes it so much better," she shot back, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Noah took a deep breath, clearly accustomed to handling tough negotiations, but not to dealing with someone like Alyssa. "I didn't come here to argue. I came to understand what we're up against." "Well, if you really want to understand, maybe you should start by talking to the people here instead of just sending your men to throw money around." Alyssa replied, walking over to the counter. "You can't buy everything, Noah. Some things are worth more than money." Her words hung in the air for a moment. Noah watched her, noticing the passion in her voice. Alyssa wasn't just clumsy or awkward, she had a strength he hadn't seen before. "Maybe you can show me," he said unexpectedly. Alyssa blinked, confused. "Show you what?" "Why this land is so important to you." "I want to see Willow Springs through your eyes," he answered, the seriousness in his tone catching Alyssa off guard. She hesitated. The idea of spending a day with Noah Phillips seemed as absurd as it was intriguing, but if he wanted to understand, this might be her chance to show him that Willow Springs was more than just land on a map. "All right," she finally said, "but I'll warn you now, don't expect anything that matches your suit." Alyssa took Noah on an impromptu tour of the town. They started at the town square, where children played near the fountain and elders chatted under the trees. Every corner seemed to have a story. She brought him to the Benson farm, where Mr. Benson proudly explained how his family had worked that land for 3 generations. "Let's play a little game for those who only read the comments. Type pizza in the comments. Only those who make it this far will understand." Now let's continue the story. Noah listened attentively, but it was hard for him to silence the practical side of his mind. He saw the emotional value people placed on the land, but couldn't ignore its commercial potential. Alyssa, however, was determined to show him what money couldn't buy. By the end of the day, she brought him to one of the highest points in town, where the view stretched across fields that seemed to go on forever. "This is it," she said, gesturing widely. "This is Willow Springs. It's not just land or buildings, it's people's homes. It's where they raise their families and build their dreams. Can you really look at this and think it's worth destroying?" Noah was silent for a moment, taking in the view. "I understand what you're saying, but I also have responsibilities. I can't ignore the opportunities this offers." Alyssa shook her head, frustrated. "You can pretend to understand, but deep down, you're just another CEO trying to pad your bank account." Her words hit harder than he cared to admit. Noah knew she wasn't entirely wrong. He had spent his life putting business above everything, but for the first time, he started to wonder if that was enough. When they returned to the general store, Alyssa's grandmother was waiting on the porch with a curious smile. "I didn't know you'd made a new friend, Alyssa," she said as Noah stepped out of the truck. "He's not my friend," Alyssa quickly replied, crossing her arms. "Not yet," Noah said, throwing her a look that made her roll her eyes. "Well, I hope you enjoyed our little corner of the world," her grandmother said, extending her hand to Noah. He shook it, surprised by her genuine kindness. "It's a special place," he admitted, giving Alyssa one last glance before leaving. As Noah drove away, Alyssa wasn't sure how she felt. Part of her was relieved he was gone, but another part couldn't ignore the fact that he seemed different. And somehow, she knew this wouldn't be the end of her interactions with Noah Phillips. A few weeks had passed since Noah's last visit to Willow Springs, but his presence was still a topic of conversation among the townspeople. Alyssa tried to push any thoughts of him aside, keeping herself busy at the general store and helping her grandmother with daily chores. Despite her efforts, the rumors about Phillips Enterprises' plans to buy land continued to grow, increasing the tension in the community. It was on a cloudy morning that Alyssa spotted Noah's black truck arriving in town once again. He stepped out with his usual confident demeanor, but this time he seemed less cold, as though something was weighing on him. Alyssa felt her stomach twist, not just with anger but with something harder to define. She dropped what she was doing and walked out of the store, determined to confront him. "Noah Phillips," she called out, her voice firm and full of determination. He stopped and turned, meeting Alyssa's challenging gaze. "Good morning, Alyssa," he said, trying to maintain his composure. "You're back. What do you want now? Haven't you caused enough trouble here?" Alyssa crossed her arms and stared at him. "I'm here to better understand the situation," Noah replied in a neutral tone. "I want to see how we can move forward without causing so many problems." "Move forward? Seriously?" Alyssa snapped, irritated. "You don't understand anything about this town, yet you think you can just decide what's best for us. You're just another greedy CEO who only sees numbers and contracts." Noah pressed his lips together, taking a deep breath to control his frustration. "Alyssa, this isn't personal. I'm just trying to do my job." "Your job?" She stepped closer to him. "Your job is destroying everything that means something to these people. To you, it's just land. To us, it's homes, stories, memories. How can that not be personal?" Her words hit him like a punch. Noah knew she wasn't entirely wrong, but he also couldn't ignore the responsibilities weighing on him. "It's not as simple as you think," he said in a calmer tone. "There are people depending on me to make this project successful, but that doesn't mean I don't care." "Caring isn't enough," Alyssa countered, her eyes shining with determination. "You're not seeing what truly matters here." Noah stood in silence, letting her words sink in. For the first time, he began to question whether his decisions were truly the right ones. Alyssa had a passion he couldn't ignore, and it left him conflicted. As Alyssa and Noah argued, the sky, already heavy with clouds, darkened even more. The wind picked up, and soon the first drops of rain began to fall. The creek that ran through the town, already swollen from days of rain, started to overflow rapidly. Shouts came from the other side of the square, drawing everyone's attention. "The river! It's overflowing!" someone yelled. Water began flooding the streets, carrying debris and threatening the closest homes. Without a second thought, Alyssa ran toward the chaos. Noah followed, alarmed by how quickly the situation was escalating. The townspeople began to gather, trying to save what they could and protect their homes. "Alyssa, what are you doing?" Noah shouted as he saw her hauling sandbags to redirect the water flooding the street. "Something that actually matters," she shot back without looking at him. Without hesitation, Noah removed his jacket and started helping. Though it was clear he wasn't used to this kind of physical effort, he followed Alyssa's and the residents' instructions, improvising barriers to contain the water. Even amidst the chaos, Alyssa couldn't help but notice Noah's determination, something she hadn't expected from him. But the situation worsened. A strong current swept away a pile of sandbags, and Alyssa rushed to try to put them back in place. Noah realized too late that she was heading toward a dangerous area where the ground had become unstable from the force of the water. "Alyssa, watch out!" he shouted, but she had already slipped. Alyssa fell into the rushing water, which quickly pulled her toward a deeper section. Without thinking, Noah ran after her, fighting against the current. He reached her and grabbed her arm firmly, pulling her closer to him. "Hold on tight," he said, struggling to keep his footing. With great effort, he managed to drag her to the bank, where they both collapsed onto the ground, exhausted and soaked. Alyssa looked at him, panting but relieved. You saved me." I wasn't gonna let you get swept away, Noah replied, still catching his breath. Their eyes met, and for a moment everything around them seemed to fade away. Thank you, she said sincerely, though her voice carried a hint of disbelief. Noah Phillips, the man she had pegged as cold and greedy, had risked everything to save her. It was nothing, he said, looking away. But deep down, he knew there was more to his actions than simple concern. As the hours passed, the rain subsided, and the townspeople managed to bring the situation under control. Despite the damage, no one was seriously injured, and it was the community's unity that made all the difference. Noah was sitting on the steps of the general store, his clothes still damp, when Alyssa approached. She sat down beside him, still processing the day's events. "You're not who I thought you were," she said, breaking the silence. "And who did you think I was?" Noah asked, looking at her. "Just another arrogant, heartless CEO," she admitted. "But today, you proved you're more than that." Noah gave a small, lopsided smile, but didn't respond right away. "And you, Alyssa, are more than just a stubborn girl trying to save her town." They shared a brief but meaningful smile. Despite the differences between their worlds, something stronger was beginning to form. Something neither of them had expected. The days following the flood were filled with rebuilding efforts in Willow Springs. The residents, led by their unity and determination, began repairing the damage caused by nature's force. Alyssa was at the heart of it all, helping wherever she could. Surprisingly, Noah remained in town instead of returning to Lakeview, drawing curious stares. Some skeptical, others even admiring. Alyssa was also confused. Since the moment Noah saved her, something had shifted between them. She couldn't explain it, but there was a connection she could no longer ignore. However, this unexpected closeness hadn't gone unnoticed by Richard, her childhood friend and longtime admirer. Richard was in his family's workshop, hammering a piece of wood, when he saw Noah crossing the square, heading toward Alyssa's store. His eyes narrowed, and he gripped the hammer tighter than necessary. Determined, he set his tools aside and followed him. At the store, Alyssa was organizing supply boxes when Richard walked in, his expression carrying something she couldn't quite identify at first. "Richard, is something wrong?" she asked, stopping what she was doing. "You should be the one answering that," he replied, crossing his arms. "Why is that guy still here?" "He has nothing to do with our town." Alyssa sighed, realizing where this conversation was headed. "He's helping. And anyway, what does it have to do with you?" "Everything, Alyssa," Richard said, his tone a mix of frustration and insecurity. "You know what he represents. He's the kind of person who takes advantage of others and leaves without looking back." "And what if he's not?" Alyssa shot back, surprising even herself with her defense. "You didn't see what he did during the flood. He didn't have to stay. He didn't have to risk anything. But he did." Richard shook his head, disbelief written all over his face. "Do you really think he cares about Willow Springs? Or about you?" "He's different, Alyssa. He doesn't understand what it means to be from here, to live like this. You know that." She swallowed hard, recognizing that Richard was trying to protect her, but she couldn't ignore the frustration bubbling inside her at how much he was assuming. "Maybe he understands more than you think. And either way, that's my decision, not yours." Richard fell silent, his eyes locked on hers. Finally, he sighed and looked away. "I just don't want to see you get hurt, Alyssa. That's all." "I know," she replied, her tone softer now, "but you need to trust me." Meanwhile, Noah was sitting in the small-town cafe, trying to make sense of everything he was feeling. He didn't understand why Alyssa's opinion mattered so much to him, or why he couldn't stop thinking about her. For years, his life had been defined by clear goals and concrete results. Now, everything felt more uncertain. He glanced out the window and saw Alyssa leaving the store with Richard following close behind. His expression was serious, almost protective. Noah felt a tightening in his chest, something he recognized as jealousy, though he didn't want to admit it. Determined to act, Noah called out to Alyssa as she approached the cafe. "Alyssa, do you have a minute?" She hesitated, casting a quick glance at Richard, who lingered a few steps away before nodding. "Sure." Noah led her to a table in a quieter corner, gathering his thoughts. "I'd like to invite you to an event in Lakeview," he began, getting straight to the point. "It's a charity gala my company hosts every year. I think it would be a good opportunity to show you how things work in my world. Alyssa stared at him, surprised. You want me to go to Lakeview with you? Why? Because I want you to see that not everything in my world is about profit and numbers, he replied, his voice sincere. I want you to understand why some decisions have to be made, and maybe because I want to spend more time with you. Alyssa's heart raced. She didn't know what to say. As much as she tried to deny it, there was something about Noah that drew her in, even when every part of her screamed that they came from different worlds. Before she could answer, Richard walked over, interrupting the conversation. Can I talk to you, Alyssa? In private. Noah looked at Richard, but stayed quiet. Alyssa sighed and stood up, following Richard to a more secluded spot. You're not going, he said before she could say anything. Excuse me? Alyssa raised an eyebrow. This event, this gala, or whatever it is, you're not going. He's just using you, Alyssa. He doesn't care about you or Willow Springs. It's all a game to him. And what makes you think you can tell me what to do? Alyssa retorted, her irritation growing. Because I know you, Alyssa. I've been here your whole life, while he just showed up and is already messing everything up. He'll leave, and you'll be the one stuck dealing with the fallout. Alyssa took a deep breath, trying to keep her anger in check. Richard, I appreciate that you care, but that doesn't give you the right to decide for me. I can take care of myself. Richard remained silent, clearly frustrated, but he realized that pushing further would only make things worse. He shook his head and walked away, leaving Alyssa alone with her thoughts. She returned to where Noah was sitting, still unsure of what to say. Finally, she took a deep breath and answered, I'll go. But just so we're clear, don't expect me to be impressed by the bright lights of the big city. Noah smiled, relieved. I'm not expecting anything, Alyssa. I just want you to see. Alyssa adjusted the dress her grandmother had helped sew for the event, glancing at her reflection in the mirror. It was nothing like the luxurious outfits she imagined would fill the charity gala in Lakeview, but it was the best she had. Even so, she couldn't shake the nerves. Every part of her mind screamed that she didn't belong in that world. When Noah arrived to pick her up, he looked as polished as ever, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that highlighted his natural confidence. As he saw her, he paused for a moment, a flicker of surprise and admiration crossing his face. You look beautiful, he said with a small smile. Alyssa blushed, looking away. It's all I had, she replied, though there was a hint of satisfaction in her tone. The car ride to Lakeview was filled with occasional small talk, but silence lingered between them. Noah, so used to having full control of every situation, realized that things were different with Alyssa. She wasn't easily impressed, and that unsettled him in a way he wasn't accustomed to. When they arrived at the event hall, Alyssa couldn't hide her awe. The venue was grand, filled with bright lights, elegant decorations, and people dressed as if they'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. But there was no time to take it all in. People were already turning to look at her, an outsider in this world of glitz and wealth. Everyone's staring, Alyssa whispered, nervous. Let them stare, Noah replied, offering his arm. You're with me. Despite his words, Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling of being out of place. While Noah greeted investors and business partners, she stood to the side, observing. The conversations around her were full of corporate jargon and stock market talk, things that made no sense to her. Noah noticed her discomfort and approached her during a brief pause. Are you okay? He asked. Yes, she lied, trying to seem at ease. Just taking it all in. He didn't believe her, but before he could press further, an elegant woman approached, interrupting. Noah, what a pleasant surprise, she said, her voice sweet but tinged with ulterior motives. And who is your guest? Alyssa caught the unspoken tone in her question, but held her composure. Noah, sensing the tension, responded calmly. This is Alyssa Collins from Willow Springs. She's a friend helping me with a project. Friend, the woman repeated, giving Alyssa a deliberate once-over. How charming! Alyssa smiled politely, though she felt a tightness in her chest. Even without saying it outright, the message was clear. She didn't belong here. Noah noticed her discomfort, but before he could intervene, Alyssa quickly excused herself and stepped outside to catch her breath. Outside, she gazed at Lakeview's skyline, feeling small. I knew I shouldn't have come, she muttered to herself. "You're overthinking it," came a familiar voice. She turned to see Noah approaching. "I'm not overthinking it," Alyssa replied, crossing her arms. "It's obvious I don't belong here. I'm just the girl from the general store, and these people know it." "You don't have to belong anywhere," Noah said, his voice softer now. "You are who you are, Alyssa, and that's what I admire about you." She stared at him, confused. "Why did you bring me here, Noah?" "Because honestly, it just feels like a reminder of how different our worlds are." "I brought you here because I wanted to show you something different," he admitted, his eyes locked on hers. "But more than that, because I wanted to be with you." His words caught her off guard. Before she could respond, one of the event organizers appeared, calling Noah for a presentation. He hesitated, but Alyssa gestured for him to go. "I'm fine," she said, trying to sound convincing. Noah watched her for another moment before heading back inside. As Alyssa tried to compose herself, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "So this is what you want now?" It was Richard. "Richard, what are you doing here?" she asked, surprised and confused. "It's not hard to figure out where Noah Phillips will be. It's all over the papers," he replied, crossing his arms. "I came because I thought you needed someone to remind you of who you really are." "Who I am," she repeated, indignant. "And what makes you think I've forgotten that?" "Because you're here, Alyssa," Richard retorted, his tone rising. "In a place that has nothing to do with you, standing next to someone who will never understand what matters to you." Alyssa took a deep breath, trying to control her anger. "You don't have the right to tell me what matters to me, Richard, and stop acting like you're my guardian." "I just don't want to see you get hurt," he said, his voice quieter now, "because I care about you. And I appreciate that." Alyssa replied, softening her tone. "But in the end, it's my life, and you need to accept that." Richard stood in silence, his eyes filled with sadness, but he knew she was right. He gave a brief nod before turning and walking away. Back inside the ballroom, Noah was on stage, finishing his speech about the company's projects. He looked out at the crowd, but his mind was elsewhere, or rather, on someone. When the applause began, he quickly thanked the audience and stepped down, heading straight to find Alyssa. She was standing in a corner, watching people dance, still trying to push away the thoughts Richard had planted in her mind. Noah approached her, stopping at her side. "Would you like to dance?" he asked, extending his hand. "I don't know how to dance like that," she replied hesitantly. "Neither do I," he said with a smile that made her relax. Reluctantly, Alyssa placed her hand in his, letting him guide her to the dance floor. The two began to move slowly to the music, Noah keeping his eyes on hers the entire time. As they danced, Alyssa looked at Noah, trying to process everything that had happened that evening. He wasn't just the CEO she had imagined. With each moment they spent together, it became harder to maintain the emotional distance she knew she needed. Despite the gala highlighting the vast differences between them, there was something in Noah's eyes that made Alyssa want to believe that maybe those barriers weren't so insurmountable after all. Let's play a game for those who only read the comments. Type Coca-Cola in the comments. Only those who made it this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. When the music ended, Noah guided her off the dance floor, both of them silent, as if trying to extend the moment. They didn't realize that, from another corner of the ballroom, curious eyes were watching them, especially one in particular. The woman who had interacted with Noah earlier, clearly suspicious of what Alyssa might mean to him. "Do you want some fresh air?" Noah asked, breaking the silence. Alyssa simply nodded, and they walked together to a balcony where the city lights glittered like artificial stars. Noah, noticing her thoughtful expression, leaned slightly to look at her face. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, genuinely curious. "I'm thinking that maybe I judged you too quickly," she admitted, looking at him. "But at the same time, I don't know where this takes us." Noah was silent for a moment, considering her words. He knew that what he felt for Alyssa wasn't something he could ignore, but he also knew their worlds were completely different. "Alyssa, I don't know where this takes us either. All I know is, you make me want to find out." She gave a faint smile, but before she could respond, the moment was interrupted by a waiter informing Noah that he was needed in the ballroom. He sighed, clearly reluctant, but Alyssa gestured for him to go. "This is your world, Noah. Go." As Noah returned to the ballroom, Alyssa decided to stay on the balcony, savoring the brief moment of silence. However, her peace was soon disrupted when the elegant woman from earlier appeared, her forced smile barely concealing her curiosity. "You must be Alyssa," the woman said, without waiting for a response. "I'm Claire. I work closely with Noah on many projects." "Nice to meet you," Alyssa replied, maintaining her composure. Something about Claire's tone made her uncomfortable. "I couldn't help but notice how attentive he is to you," Claire continued, scrutinizing Alyssa. "That's a bit unusual for him. Noah doesn't typically get distracted by this sort of thing." Alyssa sensed the implication but chose not to react. "Well, maybe he's trying something different." Claire let out a small laugh. "Perhaps. But be careful, dear. Noah's world is complicated. If you're not careful, you might end up more hurt than you realize." With those words, Claire walked away, leaving Alyssa with a knot in her stomach. As much as she hated to admit it, the woman's words struck a chord, feeding into her deepest insecurity that she didn't belong in that place or in Noah's life. When Noah returned to find Alyssa, he noticed something in her demeanor had shifted. "Is everything okay?" he asked, concerned. "Yes," she answered quickly, trying to mask her unease. "Just thinking." Noah could tell something was wrong, but chose not to push her. Instead, he suggested it might be time to head back to Willow Springs. Alyssa agreed, relieved to leave the environment that felt so foreign to her. The ride back was quiet. Alyssa stared out the window, lost in thought, while Noah occasionally glanced at her, debating whether to ask what was on her mind. But something told him Alyssa needed space. In the days that followed, Alyssa tried to return to her routine in Willow Springs, but the experience at the gala lingered. Despite her doubts and insecurities, she couldn't stop thinking about Noah. Yet, every time she considered taking another step toward him, Claire's and Richard's words echoed in her mind, holding her back. Meanwhile, Noah wrestled with his own thoughts. He realized Alyssa had something no one else in his life did. She challenged him, made him question his priorities. For the first time in years, he felt like he wanted more than just professional success. But he also knew that stepping into Alyssa's life meant confronting challenges he had never faced before. The situation grew more complicated when Richard appeared at the general store again. This time, his approach was gentler, but his intentions were unchanged. "So, how was the gala?" he asked casually as Alyssa organized the shelves. "It was interesting," she replied, keeping her response vague. "Interesting how?" Richard pressed. "Interesting because you realized he has nothing in common with you? Or interesting because you were impressed by all that grandeur?" Alyssa paused what she was doing and looked at him. "Richard, I know you're worried about me, but you don't need to remind me how different Noah and I are. I already know that." "Then why keep going?" Richard asked, his tone more serious now. "Why let someone into your life when you know it's only going to complicate things?" "Because maybe I want to find out if it's worth it," Alyssa replied, her voice steady. "And that's something only I can decide." Richard sighed, shaking his head. "I just hope you know what you're getting yourself into." Later, Alyssa was stacking boxes of fresh vegetables at the entrance of the general store when Noah appeared. It was a sunny day in Willow Springs, and he seemed more relaxed than usual, dressed down from his typical impeccable attire. Instead, he wore jeans and a casual shirt, making him look, if only for a moment, almost like he belonged in the small-town setting. "Here to supervise my box stacking skills?" Alyssa asked with a teasing smile as she placed another box on top of the pile. "No, but now that you mention it, this looks a bit dangerous," Noah replied, crossing his arms and tilting his head to examine the precarious stack. "Dangerous? Oh, please. I've been doing this since I was old enough to carry a basket of fruit," she said proudly. But the next moment, as she adjusted the top box, Alyssa slipped and sent half the fruit tumbling to the ground. Noah stifled a laugh as Alyssa, her face red with embarrassment, scrambled to gather the scattered fruit. "See? That's what I call advanced technique," he joked, crouching down to help her. "You don't have to help me. I've got this," she muttered, but Noah ignored her, picking up a handful of apples. "Of course you do," he said, handing her an apple. "But imagine the scandal if the most famous general store in Willow Springs lost its reputation over bruised fruit." Alyssa let out a laugh, unable to stay serious. Oh sure, that would be the end of the world. Once the mess was cleaned up, Noah offered to give Alyssa a ride to the Clark farm, where she needed to deliver some supplies. Initially hesitant, she eventually agreed, and the two set off together in Alyssa's old truck. The drive was full of humorous moments. At every turn, Noah seemed to hold back complaints about the state of the vehicle, while Alyssa laughed at his attempts to adjust to the stiff, uncomfortable seat. "Does this thing even have suspension?" he asked, gripping the dashboard to keep from being thrown around. "Of course it does. It's just a little tired," Alyssa replied, laughing. "But it gets the job done." When they arrived at the farm, Noah seemed relieved to step out of the truck. But Alyssa, distracted, stepped into a muddy hole and nearly fell. Noah caught her just in time, though not before her boot sank deep into the muck. "Great," Alyssa said, looking down at her mud-covered foot. "Just what I needed." Holding back laughter, Noah replied, "Maybe you should consider a contingency plan for muddy days." Alyssa gave him a playful look, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Or maybe you should learn to handle normal people who don't live in glass towers." Later, back in town, Noah invited Alyssa to take a walk to a nearby lake. It was one of her favorite spots, and after a moment of hesitation, she agreed. As they walked, Alyssa felt the connection between them grow. Noah was unlike anyone she had ever known. Yet at the same time, he seemed to fit into her life in a way she couldn't quite explain. When they reached the lakeshore, Noah turned to her, his expression more serious than usual. "Alyssa, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice calm but filled with intensity. She stayed silent, waiting. "Since we met, you've been different. You've made me see things I've never noticed before. You've made me question what really matters, and honestly, I've never felt this way about anyone." Alyssa's heart raced, but she remained quiet, unable to look away from him. "I think I'm in love with you, Alyssa," Noah confessed, "and I want to know if we can try something together. I want to be with you." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Alyssa felt her heart race, his words echoing in her mind. Before she could think, Noah stepped forward and kissed her gently. It was a kiss filled with sincerity and emotion, one that Alyssa returned without hesitation. When the kiss ended, she looked at him, confused, but also moved. "Noah, she began, but the words seemed stuck. "I know we're from different worlds," he said quickly, as if trying to ease her worries, "but that doesn't mean we can't find a way." Alyssa looked away, struggling to organize her thoughts. "I want to believe that, Noah, but you're still thinking about buying the land. You're still part of the problem we're facing." "I don't want to be the problem," he replied, his voice heavy with sincerity. "But I need time to figure this out. It's not as simple as it seems." "Exactly," Alyssa said, stepping back. "Nothing about this is simple. I don't know if I can risk getting more involved with you while all of this is still happening. I don't want to get hurt, Noah, and I don't want my town to pay the price." Noah looked at her, his heart aching. He wanted to promise her that he would fix everything, but he knew he couldn't make empty promises. Instead, he nodded slowly. "I understand. But Alyssa, I'm not giving up on you. Not now, not ever." She gave him a faint smile, but didn't respond. "Maybe we should head back to town," she said, changing the subject. Noah agreed, though reluctantly, and the two walked back to the truck, each lost in their own thoughts. Alyssa spent the following days trying to ignore the whirlwind of emotions consuming her since Noah kissed her. She wanted to convince herself that life would return to normal, but she knew that was impossible. Her feelings for Noah were growing, even as doubts and fears continued to haunt her. Noah, on the other hand, was determined to show Alyssa that he was more than the corporate decisions weighing on his shoulders. He knew he needed to prove that his feelings for her were genuine, and that his vision for Willow Springs could be different from what she imagined. But to do so, he needed to act. A few days later, Noah returned to Willow Springs with a plan. He knew Alyssa would be busy at the general store, so he decided to show up unannounced. When she saw him walk in, she let out a deep sigh. "Noah, what are you doing here again?" she asked, trying to keep her tone casual. "I needed to talk," he replied. "And I thought it would be better to do it in person." Alyssa set down the box she was carrying and crossed her arms, looking at him. "About what, exactly?" About the land, Noah said plainly. And about us. She raised an eyebrow. Us? I'm not sure there is an us, Noah. I disagree, he replied calmly. I think there is, even if you don't want to admit it. Alyssa opened her mouth to respond, but was interrupted by the sound of footsteps at the entrance. Richard walked into the store, stopping abruptly when he saw Noah. Him again? Richard asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Richard, this isn't a good time, Alyssa started, but he ignored her. No, Alyssa, this needs to be said. This guy is only here to mess with your head. He doesn't care about you or this town. Noah remained calm, but his eyes fixed on Richard. I do care. That's exactly why I'm here. Oh, sure, Richard shot back sarcastically. You care so much that you're willing to destroy everything we have for a project that means nothing to you. I'm not destroying anything, Noah said, his voice firm. I'm trying to find a solution that works for everyone. That's what you say now, Richard shot back. But we know how these things work. You'll do whatever's best for your company, and that's the end of it. Alyssa, seeing that the argument was spiraling out of control, stepped in. Enough, both of you. I'm not a prize for you to fight over, and my town isn't a battlefield. Noah looked at her, clearly regretful about the situation. You're right. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. Alyssa sighed, frustration evident. I know, Noah, but trying isn't enough. You need to understand what this means to us. Richard cast one last glance at Noah before leaving the store, leaving the two of them alone. Later that afternoon, Alyssa walked to the town square, trying to clear her mind. She felt torn between her feelings for Noah and the reality of their opposing worlds. Not far away, Noah watched her from a distance, reflecting on how he could earn her trust. Suddenly, a group of children ran past Alyssa, laughing as they splashed each other with improvised buckets of water. One of them tripped, spilling a bucket full of water directly onto Alyssa's feet, soaking her shoes. Just perfect, Alyssa exclaimed, trying not to laugh. As the kids apologized and ran off, Noah approached, struggling to hide a grin. I see your luck with water hasn't improved, he teased. Alyssa shook her head, trying to shake the excess water from her shoes. If you knew how many times this has happened, you wouldn't be surprised. And yet, you still managed to laugh about it? Noah said, impressed. That's what I do. There's not much I can control, so I've learned to laugh when things go wrong, she replied, unaware of how much that statement reflected her essence. Noah was silent for a moment before speaking again. You know, that's what I admire most about you. You handle everything with such grace. It makes me want to be different too. Alyssa looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. Noah, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, he replied, stepping closer. I just want you to know that I'm here, and that I'm willing to change. Before she could respond, he gently took her hand. Alyssa, I know our worlds are different, and I know there's still so much we need to figure out, but I want you in my life. I want this to work. Alyssa looked at him, her heart torn between emotion and fear. And what if it doesn't, Noah? What if all of this is just a dream that falls apart when reality sets in? Then we'll figure it out together, he said without hesitation. She felt tears well up in her eyes but refused to let them fall. I need time, Noah. I need to think about all of this. He nodded, respecting her need for space. I'll wait as long as it takes, but know this, for me, you're the right choice. Alyssa gave him a faint smile but didn't respond as she walked away, leaving Noah alone in the square. The following days were a mix of silence and reflection for Alyssa. She avoided Noah, not because she didn't care, but because she needed space to figure out what she truly wanted. Her insecurities about their different worlds still weighed heavily on her, and the ongoing issue with the Willow Springs land only made things harder. Noah, on the other hand, decided that waiting passively wasn't enough. He knew he needed to show Alyssa through his actions that he was willing to change and that his feelings for her were real. As a first step, he instructed Blake to halt all land negotiations while he handled the situation personally. The next morning, Alyssa was at the general store, busy reorganizing inventory, when she heard the sound of a car pulling up outside. Peeking through the window, she saw Noah stepping out, carrying 2 bags filled with something. Why are you here? She asked as soon as he walked in. I came to help, he replied, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I don't know if you've noticed, but carrying bags of potatoes and organizing shelves isn't part of your job, she retorted, crossing her arms. Today it is, Noah said with a challenging smile. And before you tell me I don't need to do this, let me remind you, you're the one who said I should understand how people here live. Alyssa let out a short laugh but relented. Fine, but don't think I'll go easy on you. With that, Noah started helping. He carried heavy boxes, attempted to organize products, most of which ended up in the wrong spots, and even offered to help customers. However, his efforts were a mix of determination and disasters. At one point, he dropped a bottle of tomato sauce which shattered on the floor, spreading red liquid everywhere. Alyssa couldn't hold back her laughter. You're definitely not cut out for this, Noah. Hey, at least I'm trying, he replied, grabbing a cloth to clean up the mess. Despite his embarrassment, he laughed along with her, realizing that even in the most awkward moments, being around Alyssa was unlike anything else. Meanwhile, rumors about the suspension of Phillips Enterprises' land negotiations began circulating through the town. The residents were cautiously optimistic, but also curious about what had changed. The news reached Richard, who wasted no time confronting Alyssa. He's manipulating you, Richard said, showing up at the store at the end of the day. Manipulating how? Alyssa asked, exhausted by his persistence. He wants you to believe he cares, but in the end, all of this is to gain your trust and move forward with his plan. Richard, you don't know that, Alyssa replied, tired. Noah is trying to change. He even suspended the negotiations. For now, Richard shot back, crossing his arms. But what happens when he can't keep the investors happy anymore? Alyssa didn't respond. As much as she wanted to believe in Noah, Richard's words planted doubts she couldn't ignore. Noah noticed Alyssa's hesitation and decided he needed to do more. The next day, he invited her for a drive. Initially reluctant, she agreed, curious about what he had planned. Noah took her to the land his company had prioritized for the project. To her surprise, he began talking about preserving the community. I know this might sound strange coming from me, but I want you to understand that I'm trying to find a balance, he said, looking out at the landscape. My initial plan was to turn this into something big, but now I see the value it holds for you. I'm willing to rethink everything. Do you really think you can change all of this? Alyssa asked, her tone a mix of hope and skepticism. I have to try, Noah replied. Not just for you, but because it's the right thing to do. Willow Springs deserves to be respected. Alyssa's heart wavered. Noah no longer seemed like the distant CEO she had met. He was someone willing to listen, learn, and change. Still, her insecurities lingered. Days later, Noah was back in Lakeview, facing mounting pressure from his team and investors. The suspension of the Willow Springs negotiations had sparked questions and doubts about his leadership. He knew he was risking his reputation, but he didn't care. Alyssa, and everything she represented, had become his priority. The next day, Noah returned to Willow Springs with a plan. He knew he needed to act to show Alyssa he was committed. Not just to her, but to the community as well. As soon as he arrived in town, he headed straight to the square, where he saw Alyssa talking with a group of residents. Can we talk? Noah asked, interrupting the conversation. Alyssa nodded, saying goodbye to the others before following him to a bench under a tree. He looked tense, as though he were carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. I've made a decision, Noah began bluntly. I canceled the land project. Permanently. Alyssa blinked in surprise. You did what? I canceled it, he repeated. There won't be any construction or land purchases. Willow Springs will stay as it is. She stared at him, trying to process what this meant. Why? Because you were right, Noah replied, his voice earnest. This land is more than just property. It's the home of the people who live here, and I can't be the person who destroys that. But won't this cause problems for you? For your company? Alyssa asked, concerned. Yes, it will, he admitted. But I'm willing to deal with the consequences. Some things are worth more than money or business. Alyssa felt her heart tighten. Noah was sacrificing for her, for Willow Springs, and it made her realize that she might have underestimated him. Let's play a little game for those who only read the comments. Type hamburger in the comments. Only those who make it this far will understand. Now, let's continue with the story. Despite Noah's decision, Alyssa's doubts didn't completely disappear. That evening, as she walked alone through the quiet streets of town, she found Richard sitting on his porch. "Mind if I join you?" she asked. Richard shrugged but motioned to the seat next to him. "Sure." For a few minutes, they sat in silence, staring at the stars. Finally, Richard spoke. "So he really gave up the land?" "Yes," Alyssa replied. "He said he wants to do the right thing." "And do you believe him?" Richard asked, turning to look at her. Alyssa sighed. "I want to believe him, but it's still hard." Richard was quiet for a moment before saying, "Maybe you should give him a chance. It seems like he's trying." She stared at him, surprised. "You're saying this? After everything?" Richard gave a small smile. "I just want you to be happy, Alyssa, even if it means accepting that maybe Noah isn't the villain I thought he was." Alyssa didn't respond, but Richard's words stayed with her as she walked home. In the days that followed, Noah began to involve himself more in the community. He helped repair a fence at the Clark farm, participated in a local fundraiser to improve the town's school, and even learned to plant crops with the local farmers. Despite his initial clumsiness, he threw himself into each task with determination, slowly earning the trust of the townspeople. Alyssa watched all of this from a distance, still trying to process how a man who once seemed so far removed from her reality now felt like a part of it. Gradually, her walls began to come down. It was during one of the events in the town square that Alyssa finally approached Noah. He was helping serve food at a booth when she walked up. "Need some help?" she asked, smiling. Noah looked at her, surprised but pleased. "Always?" They worked side by side, chatting casually and laughing at Noah's small mishaps, like when he knocked over an entire tray of lemonade cups. For Alyssa, it felt as though all the worries she had been carrying melted away, if only for that moment. When the event ended and the square began to empty, Noah asked Alyssa to take a walk. They headed to the lake, where the water mirrored the glow of the moon. "Alyssa," Noah began, stopping near the shore. "I know it took me a while to understand what truly matters, but I want you to know that everything I've done has been for you, because I believe in us." She looked at him, her emotions clear in her eyes. "You're trying so hard, Noah, and that means so much to me, but I'm still afraid. Afraid that in the end, our worlds might just be incompatible." "I understand," he said, taking her hands in his. "But I believe we can build something together, Alyssa. Something that works for us. I'm not giving up on you." She smiled softly, squeezing his hands. "Maybe I need to stop being so afraid." "Maybe," Noah replied with a smile. "But until then, I'll keep proving to you that this is worth it." As Noah and Alyssa began finding their rhythm in their newly discovered relationship, a storm loomed on the horizon. Not in the skies over Willow Springs, but in Noah's corporate world. His decision to cancel the land project had infuriated investors, and rumors that he was prioritizing personal matters began circulating among the company's board members. That morning, Noah was in his office in Lakeview, facing a virtual board meeting. The expressions on the faces filling the screen were grim and impatient. "Phillips, we need answers," demanded one of the senior investors, his tone sharp. "You've halted a profitable project, dismissed part of the team involved, and still haven't presented an alternative plan. We're starting to lose confidence in the company's direction," added another, equally stern. "We want to know, what are your priorities?" Noah took a deep breath, holding back his frustration. He had expected this reaction, but the pressure was overwhelming. "My priority is to find solutions that benefit both the company and the communities involved," he replied firmly. "Benefit communities?" One of the directors scoffed with a sarcastic laugh. "Phillips Enterprises is a billion-dollar company, not a charity." Noah clenched his fists under the table, but kept his composure. "We're not abandoning the project. We're reworking it to ensure it's more sustainable and respectful to the local community." "That sounds more like an excuse than a plan," another director interjected, shaking his head. "Perhaps your personal priorities are interfering with business decisions." The accusation hung in the air, and Noah felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him. He knew that by choosing Alyssa and Willow Springs, he was putting his position at risk. But he also knew he couldn't backtrack. "I'll present a new plan soon," he said, ending the discussion with a tone of finality. "I trust you'll judge it based on the results." Back in Willow Springs, Alyssa was grappling with her own doubts. Despite everything Noah had done, the shadow of his world still loomed over them. She worried that, in the end, he might have to choose between her and his company, and that she wouldn't be the choice he made. Alyssa's grandmother, noticing her granddaughter's restless mood, sat beside her on the porch of the general store. "What's on your mind, dear?" she asked gently. "It's Noah," Alyssa said, staring into the horizon. "He's trying. He's done so much for me, for the town. But I can't shake the feeling that all of this could fall apart." Her grandmother smiled with calm wisdom. "You know, Alyssa, love isn't about guarantees. It's about choices. And from what I see, Noah is choosing you every single day. And what if one day he can't choose me?" Alyssa asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then you'll have to trust that he did everything he could. And in the meantime, maybe it's time for you to choose too," her grandmother said, holding her hand. A few days later, Noah returned to Willow Springs, determined to spend some time with Alyssa before facing the mounting pressure in Lakeview. He found her at the general store, distracted as she arranged the shelves. "Deep in thought?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "Maybe," she replied without looking at him. "Shouldn't you be in the big city, dealing with your furious investors?" "Probably," he said with a smile. "But I'd rather be here." Alyssa finally looked at him, noticing the exhaustion in his eyes. "They're putting a lot of pressure on you, aren't they?" "They are," Noah admitted, "but I'm not going to let that change my priorities." "And what if they don't accept it?" Alyssa asked, her voice heavy with concern. "What if you lose everything?" Noah stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "Then I lose it. But I'd rather lose that than lose you." His words hit her like a wave. Before she could respond, he continued, "Alyssa, I'm not going to lie to you. This won't be easy, but I'm willing to face whatever comes because you're worth it." She remained silent, fighting back tears. "I want to believe that, Noah. I want to believe we can make this work." "Then believe it," he said with a gentle smile, "because I'm not giving up." That evening, Noah invited her to a simple dinner in a small clearing near the lake. He had prepared everything: a blanket on the ground, a picnic basket, and lights strung in the trees. Alyssa was surprised to see how much effort he had put into it. "You did all this?" she asked, laughing. "I did," he replied, a proud glint in his eyes. "I hope it's good enough to rival the general store." "It definitely is," she said, sitting down beside him. They spent hours talking, laughing, and sharing stories from their vastly different lives. For the first time, Alyssa felt that maybe it was possible to find balance between their two worlds. When the evening came to an end, Noah walked her back to the store's entrance. Before saying goodbye, he looked into her eyes and said, "I know the future is uncertain, but I promise I'm with you, no matter what happens." Alyssa smiled, finally allowing herself to believe. "I'm with you too, Noah, no matter what happens." The next day, Noah returned to Lakeview with a renewed sense of determination, knowing he was about to face his toughest battle yet. The company's board had called an emergency meeting, and he could feel they were ready to demand more definitive answers. As he prepared his arguments, thoughts of Alyssa kept him focused. He needed to find a way to balance protecting the company with keeping his promise to her. The meeting was tense from the start. The stern faces around the table made it clear the board's patience had worn thin. Phillips, one of the senior members, began, leaning forward. "Your decision to abandon the land project has cost us millions in potential investments. Shareholders are questioning whether you're still committed to the company's growth." "And rightly so," another member interjected. "You've been talking about a more community-focused approach, but that's not what drives profits. This company cannot be guided by sentimentality." Noah remained calm, though the pressure was mounting. He knew it would be impossible to please everyone, but he also knew he needed to act with conviction. "I understand your concerns," Noah began, his voice firm, "and I acknowledge that my recent decisions have been unconventional. But I want to make it clear that I am committed to the success of Phillips Enterprises. However, I believe we can achieve that success without compromising the values of the communities we impact." The board members exchanged skeptical glances. One of them responded, "You need to be more specific. What exactly are you proposing?" "I'm proposing a complete overhaul of our strategy," Noah explained. Instead of large acquisitions that face resistance, we will invest in partnerships with communities. We'll build sustainable infrastructure that benefits everyone, residents and investors alike. The room fell silent for a moment until one of the more influential board members spoke. This approach is risky. It could take years to yield returns. And it's worth it, Noah responded immediately. Because long-term success comes from building trust, not destroying it. While some members still appeared reluctant, others began to consider the proposal. After lengthy discussions, the meeting concluded with a promise that a final decision would be made soon. Meanwhile, in Willow Springs, Alyssa was slowly adjusting to the idea that Noah was truly changing. The townspeople started noticing the positive impact of his actions, and even Richard, who had been his harshest critic, began to soften his stance. "Maybe he's not as bad as I thought," Richard admitted one afternoon while helping Alyssa unload supplies at the general store. "That's about as close to a compliment as you've ever given him," Alyssa teased with a smile. Richard shrugged but had a faint grin on his face. "I just hope he's ready for what's ahead, because if he messes this up, I won't let him off easy." Alyssa laughed, knowing Richard was only trying to protect her. Still, for the first time, she felt he was accepting her choice. A few days later, Noah returned to Willow Springs, this time with good news. He found Alyssa at the general store, busy helping customers, and waited patiently until she was free. "You look pretty pleased with yourself," she said, noticing him leaning against the counter with a smile. "And I am," he replied. "The board approved my proposal. We're changing the company's strategy." Alyssa raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You managed to convince them?" "It was a fight," he admitted. "But yes, we did it. Willow Springs will be the model for the company's new direction. Nothing will be done without the community's approval." She smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Noah, that's amazing. And it's just the beginning," he said, taking her hands in his. "All of this was possible because of you, Alyssa. You made me see things differently." She felt tears well up in her eyes but tried to hide them. "I didn't do anything. You did this yourself." "No, Alyssa, you did more than you realize." Later, Noah sat on the general store's porch, waiting for Alyssa to finish closing up after another day of work. The sunset painted the Willow Springs sky in golden hues, and Noah felt the timing was perfect for what he had planned. Since convincing the board to change the company's strategy, his vision for the future had become clear, and that future included Alyssa. When she finally joined him, wiping her hands on her apron, she noticed the nervousness in his eyes. "Are you okay?" she asked, tilting her head. "I am," he said, smiling softly. "In fact, I've never been better." Before she could ask anything else, he stood up, taking her hands in his. "Alyssa, I've thought a lot about everything we've been through, the differences, the challenges, how much our lives have changed since we met. But one thing has never changed: my desire to be with you." Alyssa's heart raced as Noah knelt down, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. He opened it, revealing a simple yet stunning ring, elegant in a way that seemed made just for her. "Alyssa Collins, you are the reason I'm a better man today. You've taught me what truly matters and shown me that love is worth every risk. I want to spend every day by your side, learning, laughing, and building something incredible together. Will you marry me?" Tears filled Alyssa's eyes, but she couldn't contain the smile spreading across her face. "Noah, of course I will," she said, her voice filled with emotion as he slid the ring onto her finger. Noah stood, pulling her into a tight embrace before kissing her under the soft glow of the setting sun. In that moment, all of Alyssa's doubts and fears melted away. Their love hadn't just overcome the barriers between them, it had transformed them into a foundation for something even greater. In the days that followed, news of the engagement spread quickly throughout Willow Springs. The townspeople, who had initially been wary of Noah, now saw him as an ally and celebrated enthusiastically. Alyssa's grandmother, in particular, couldn't hide her joy. "I always knew he had something special," she told anyone who would listen, her eyes sparkling with pride. To celebrate Noah's success at the company and their engagement, he and Alyssa planned a party in the town square. Lights were strung in the trees, tables were set with homemade food from the locals, and a small band was invited to play lively music. As night fell, the square buzzed with joy. Children ran between the tables while adults chatted and laughed. Noah, helping serve food, looked completely at ease. From across the square, Alyssa watched him, her heart swelling with love and gratitude. The party was in full swing when Noah stepped onto a small makeshift stage to give a speech. He held a microphone, and beside him stood Alyssa, with her grandmother holding her hand. "I want to thank all of you for being here tonight," Noah began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "When I first came to Willow Springs, I'll admit, I didn't understand the value of this place. But Alyssa and each one of you showed me what truly matters: community, love, and respect." The square erupted in applause, but Noah raised his hand to continue. "Tonight, we're not just celebrating the new direction of the company, we're celebrating the strength of this town and the incredible people who make it so special." He turned to Alyssa, his eyes shining. "And I want to take this moment to say that this woman by my side has changed my life. She's the reason I'm here, not just today, but forever." Alyssa felt tears streaming down her face as Noah leaned in to kiss her, the crowd erupting into cheers and applause. Her grandmother beamed, pulling both of them into a warm embrace. The celebration continued late into the night, filled with laughter, dancing, and memories that no one in Willow Springs would ever forget. For Alyssa, it was more than just a party. It was confirmation that their two worlds, despite their differences, had found a way to coexist. As the lights twinkled softly in the trees and the band played their final song, Alyssa and Noah stood side by side, watching their friends and neighbors enjoy the moment. "Do you think we made it?" she asked softly. "I know we did," Noah replied, taking her hand, "and I can't wait to see what else we can build together." She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. Under the stars of Willow Springs, Noah and Alyssa began a new chapter in their lives, proving that love and determination could overcome any difference when both were willing to fight for the same dream. What did you think of Noah and Alyssa's story? Share your opinion in the comments. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What's your score? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to follow all our stories. And take a moment to watch more heartwarming stories by clicking here on the end screen.